Greetings to my fellow peace blunderers, and today I'm showing you an absolutely terrible game played by me, but also a game where I made not one, not two, but three very interesting sacrifices, and the ideas behind these sacrifices are very thematic, so I figured it will be very useful for you guys if I break these ideas down. 2 out of the 3 sacrifices that I played were deemed as brilliant moves by the chess.com game review system, with the third one being deemed as an inaccuracy, which is absolutely ridiculous if you ask me, and I'll explain why that is. I don't really care how chess.com labels my move per se, it's more about liking the way I perform, the way I win or don't win. I don't really need to win to enjoy myself out there, but it does underline a bigger issue, and I did make a video about that some time ago. You should really check that one out, why you should not trust the chess.com game review system. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into the good stuff. So the position that you're seeing right now, I'm playing from Black's perspective, and Black is definitely worse here. Of course, at the time of playing, I didn't realize what the engine evaluation was, but I felt as though I was a bit under pressure. My king, albeit relatively safe for now, on h8, can be under pressure at some point in the future because we've got so many pieces of whites staring at the king side. This rook is sort of being liberated as well, so I didn't feel very comfortable in my skin. On top of that, they've got this really nice pawn on e5, and yes, you could argue that I do have a symmetrically nice pawn on d4, but let's put it this way, the e5 pawn is more dangerous to me and to my king side than my d4 pawn is to their king side. And this is where I felt that there was something that I could do about this position. I couldn't really tell what, but I sensed there was some tactical opportunity and I started looking for it. And what I took into consideration here is that this knight, like I said, was defending the important e5 pawn that was a real thorn in my eye. So I figured, what if I could displace that knight to sort of make white's position a bit more vulnerable? And of course, the first move you're looking at is the exchange sacrifice. Rook takes knight on f3. But really, just to take the knight on f3 so that I could take the pawn on e5 didn't seem like enough of a compensation, so I tried justifying my move even more. And what I looked into was the following. You see that knight on c6, right? There it is. And let's imagine we take the knight on f3, and I will expect the rook to take back, not the pawn, otherwise the king's side of whites is going to be a bit iffy. And after knight takes c5, yes, I finally get rid of that e5 pawn, I attack the rook with tempo, I make this pawn maybe slightly vulnerable, etc. But it's not only about that. You see what happened with my pieces that are situated over here. On top of getting rid of the e5 pawn, I opened up both the bishop and the rook very, very nicely, which I liked a lot. And if I wanted to develop these pieces, the rook and the bishop, in another way, well, it's very hard to do that. The knight on c6, if it doesn't take on e5, where is the knight supposed to move to open up the bishop and the rook? There aren't really any squares. This is blocked, this is blocked, this is blocked. This is not blocked, but if we move the knight to a5 as it stands, it's just going to get captured. This is blocked, and this, well, not very appealing. Possible, but not very appealing. Whereas, of course, after the sacrifice that I can replay once again, the knight jumps into e5, and we've got the position opened up. This position is still better for white. It's not like I made some genius sacrifice and I'm instantly winning, but you've got to say that the position opened up a little bit more, which I like. And generally speaking, it does feel like black poses more of an attacking threat now. The position is more double-edged, which is again awesome. And this sacrifice, remarkably, is not unsound at all. Rook takes f3. Well, the game review system told me it was an inaccuracy, but it's just absolute bonkers. If you actually switch on the engine and if you let it go deep enough, it will actually show that rook takes f3 is the best move. I'm going to also pin a screenshot somewhere there on your screen for you to see that I'm not lying. And this is another point why the chess.com review system is sometimes flawed. It analyzes games at a very surface level, and sometimes moves that are at a certain depth considered inaccurate. On a higher depth, they are actually the best, which is the case. So this is not an inaccuracy. I'm not having that. Chess.com, you hear me? This is at least the best move in the position provided by the engine. And to stay true to the title that I put in the video, if you so wish, you could argue that this move is also brilliant. And like I say, I don't really care, but on some level, you know, on the other hand, that does feel a bit nice to realize that you played a game with 3 brilliant moves, no matter how vain that sounds. But anyway, so from here on out, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. This is not particularly relevant. All you need to know is that we made a lot of mistakes before the sequence and after the sequence. This game was terrible. Like I said in the intro, if you look at the accuracy stat, both of us had it below 70. This is just absolutely nightmarish. But it does goes to show that even though you can have a terrible game, sometimes when you make just a couple of moves that are spot on, this can make a big difference between winning and losing. And honestly, at this stage of my chess career, I would rather win games in a more accurate, boring fashion than this, but this is what happened, and I felt as though it was a very instructive example, so there you go. So we basically tried developing our pieces, put them into more attacking positions, and all the fireworks are going off. I just delivered a fork there on the rook and on the queen. I have my own rook attacked. I've got this knight attacked. All things are going on, right? So white saves their queen. I take their rook with check and ruin their pawn structure a bit, as well as a bonus. And after takes, this is where I delivered my second sacrifice of the game. At this point, after a serious mistakes by both parties, black is actually winning. And winning by a massive margin. The deeper the engine goes, the more it prefers black's position, but even at minimal depth, it already gives black minus 13. But there is a catch. There is only one move that provides that minus 13 advantage. All the other moves are much, much worse. They still give black the winning position, but the second best move is already jumping from minus 13 to minus 3. And as some of you may have guessed, this move is going to be another exchange sacrifice. I have sacrificed 2 rooks for my opponent's knight and now my opponent's bishop, with rook takes d2 and knight will of course retake on d2 as well. So coming back, what was the idea behind that sacrifice? And again, as in the first sacrifice, I had multiple reasons why I did it. First of all, my bishop, if we can imagine that this knight gets away from the e4 square, my bishop would be absolutely brilliant. It is good right now as it is, but imagine with this knight not on e4. It's just cutting through the entire board like butter. Another point is that I really am enjoying my knight on e3. I think it's a brilliant knight. It's controlling a lot of squares. Most importantly, some of the squares around the white's king on f1 and on g2. The problem is that this bishop looks like it's going to capture my knight sooner rather than later. And compare this bishop to my knights. These are incomparable. Uncomparable? Bishop is much worse than my knight, so I would like to prevent that as well. And thirdly, and probably the most important reason, I would really like to play bishop d6. And this is the move that I had spotted before I played the sacrifice. The reason why I can't play bishop d6 right now is of course obvious. The d6 square is under too much control. If I play bishop d6 now, it's just going to get captured, right? And why do I want to play bishop d6 if we can imagine that I will manage to play bishop d6? Let's imagine it is possible right now. the bishop is going to attack the queen. So we develop a bishop, kind of, sort of. On e7, it wasn't doing too much. On d6, it's much more dangerous, looking at the h2 pawn as well. So we're going to develop a bishop with tempo, because the queen will have to move away. And if I am allowed, at some point, I would really like to play my queen either on f6 or on g5 to really ask questions of that white's king. And what's also interesting is something that I never realized up until I looked at this game with an engine, is that in this position, bishop d6 is the only winning move for black, the only one. To me, it seemed quite intuitive, but I never realized that it is the only move that gives me an edge, because after bishop d6, which I did of course play, it's minus 15 for black. All the other moves, any other move, not bishop d6, instantly down to all zeros, if not better for white. So that's just another piece of beauty. That is the game of chess. Just one move to win, all the other moves not so good. So now white's queen is attacked and they retreat to h5 quite cleverly, I should say, because on h5 the queen is not really allowing me to play queen g5 check, which I would have really liked to do. Well, this move is not impossible, it's just that it's very unappealing. And this is where I started thinking, the white's king is virtually trapped. Just look at all of these squares that my pieces are controlling, like so. Take a look at these red squares. And what I wanted to do now is that I wanted to come up with a way so that I worsen the white's king position whilst still maintaining all of the red squares that you can see right now. And what I mean by that is that I wanted to develop a piece or two to move them maybe closer to the white's king, but I didn't want to lessen the grip on the king. And what I did in the end was my third brilliant sacrifice of the game, which was bishop takes h2 with check, of course. Voila! And if you didn't understand exactly what I meant when I was explaining the sacrifice, don't worry, I'm about to show you. If the white king takes, which it shouldn't do, but if it takes, I can now play queen d6 check, coming with tempo. And look at these red squares again. The squares that I'm controlling, these are the same red squares that I was controlling before the sack right here. You see, there's absolutely no difference. And this was my point. I maintained the same level of control over this 3-3 sector, so to speak. But with my sacrifice, I made the white's king position much worse. It used to be on g1, where it still had the privilege of going to f2. Now it doesn't have this privilege. And from here on out, actually, it is a forced mate in 3. The best thing that the white pieces can do is to first block with the queen by queen e5. I take the queen, deliver the same check, controlling still the same squares. And now, when the king goes to the only available square, that is g1, I deliver mate with queen g3, and the game is over. That said, my opponent, of course, did not allow me to have that pleasure to deliver a mate in 3. They did something that is more resilient. They retreated the king to the only available square, which was f2, without taking my bishop. And now I just played queen f6 check, something that was also enabled by bishop d6. You know, the bishop on e7 would have blocked my queen from d8 to go to f6. Now that I've developed my bishop very nicely and put it first on d6 and then on h2, my queen can go to f6 and deliver this check. And from here on out, after some moves and after some mistakes by both sides yet again, I won the game. I've very organically developed the queen into the mixer with check, and I've still got my 2 amazing bishops and not less amazing knight on e3. And I'm not really proud of this game at all. This game was quite low standard apart from some very select number of moves, which I just showed. And that is why I'm not showing you the rest of the game, because that would be quite embarrassing. But I felt as though these moves that were actually quite good had some instructive use behind them. That's why I'm showing them to you. So yeah, always consider exchange sacrifices or even piece sacrifices if you want to open up some ranks, files, and diagonals, if you want to remove your opponent's pieces to some other squares or put them into worse positions, or if you want to preserve your own pieces that would otherwise have been captured. For example, my knight on a3, if you remember, was attacked by a bishop on d2 that I removed with my rook. And yeah, if you just so happened to find this video useful, please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitch. I stream Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Find me on chess.com. Join our Discord. All that good stuff. And I'm going to talk to you very soon. My favorite unintentional gambit is. Love you all. See ya in the next one.